Thunder cracked over the city as Haley Morgan balanced 3 glasses of whiskey on her tray. The club was packed tonight, bodies pressed against polished marble, expensive perfume mixing with cigar smoke. She moved through the crowd carefully, focusing on each step because her vision kept blurring at the edges. 3 days. That was how long it had been since she'd eaten a real meal. The paycheck she got on Friday disappeared into a pharmacy 2 blocks from her apartment, paying for medication she couldn't afford to skip. The pills kept her functional. The hunger made everything else harder. Table 7 needs refills, Marcus called from behind the bar. Haley nodded without looking at him. Table 7. The corner booth where dangerous men conducted business while pretending to enjoy the music. She knew who sat there tonight. Everyone who worked at the club knew Roberto Zanarello when he walked through the door. 33 years old, dark hair always perfectly styled, eyes the color of burnt caramel that missed nothing. He wore black tonight, suit jacket open over a white shirt, no tie. His posture radiated control. She approached the table slowly. 4 men sat with him, all wearing dark suits, all speaking in low tones that stopped the moment she got close. Roberto glanced up. His gaze moved over her face for half a second before returning to the man across from him. "Gentlemen," Haley said quietly, setting down the first glass. Her hand trembled slightly. She forced it steady. "Your drinks." No one acknowledged her. That was normal. In their world, bartenders were furniture. She placed the second glass, then the third. As she reached for the fourth, a wave of dizziness hit her so hard she had to grip the edge of the table. "You all right?" one of the men asked, not unkindly. "Fine," she lied. The word came out thin. She blinked hard, trying to clear her vision. Black spots danced across everything. The room tilted. She took a step back from the table, tray clutched against her chest like a shield. Roberto looked up again. This time his eyes stayed on her. Haley turned away quickly, heading back toward the bar. She made it 4 steps before her knees buckled. The tray clattered to the floor. Glass shattered. The sound cut through the music, sharp and final. She fell. Strong hands caught her before she hit the marble. Arms wrapped around her waist, pulling her up against a solid chest. She tried to speak, but nothing came out. Her body felt impossibly heavy, like all the strength had drained out through the soles of her shoes. "I've got you," a voice said near her ear. Deep, calm, authoritative. Roberto. He shifted his grip, one arm under her knees, the other supporting her back. He lifted her as if she weighed nothing. Through the fog in her head, Haley felt him tense. She was too light. She knew that. Everyone who picked her up lately noticed. "Clear the way," Roberto said, not loudly, but every person between him and the stairs moved immediately. Haley's head lolled against his shoulder. She forced her eyes open, catching fragments of the scene. People staring. Marcus behind the bar with his phone out, probably calling an ambulance. The security guard near the door looking uncertain. "No ambulance," Roberto said without looking at anyone. "I'm handling this." He carried her up the stairs to the second floor where management offices lined a quiet hallway. The private spaces where deals happened away from cameras and crowds. His office was at the end, door solid and dark. He pushed it open with his shoulder, carrying her inside. The room was dimly lit. All leather furniture and dark wood. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the city. Rain streaked down the glass in silver lines. Roberto moved to the long couch against the wall and laid her down carefully. He pulled off his suit jacket and draped it over her like a blanket. Haley blinked up at him, trying to focus. He crouched beside the couch, studying her face with an intensity that made her want to look away. "What's your name?" he asked. "Haley." Her voice cracked. "I'm sorry. I don't know what. When did you last eat?" She hesitated. "This morning." His jaw tightened. "Don't lie to me." Haley swallowed. Something about the way he said it made honesty feel safer than deception. "Friday. I had toast on Friday. Today is Monday." "I know." Roberto's eyes darkened. He reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away, and gently took her left wrist. Her sleeve had bunched up when he carried her. Now he pushed it higher, exposing her forearm. Haley's breath stopped. The bruises were visible now. purple-black fingerprints circling her wrist, yellow-green marks higher up where older injuries were fading, and the burns. 3 circular scars on her inner forearm, perfectly spaced, the size of cigarette tips. Roberto stared at her arm for a long moment. His thumb brushed over one of the burn scars, touch feather light. When he looked up at her again, his expression was completely unreadable. "Who did this to you?" It wasn't a question. It was a command. Haley tried to pull her arm back, but his grip tightened just enough to keep her still. Not painful, just firm. "It's nothing," she whispered. "It's fine." "This is not fine. You don't understand. Then explain it to me." She couldn't. How could she explain Derek to someone like Roberto Zanarello? How could she make him understand the slow way violence crept into a relationship, the way fear became normal, the way leaving felt more dangerous than staying? "I need to go back to work," she said instead, trying to sit up. Roberto placed one hand on her shoulder, gently pressing her back down. "You're not going anywhere until I get answers. You can't just—" "I can." His voice dropped lower. "And I am." Haley's throat tightened. She looked away from him, focusing on the windows. The city lights blurred through the rain. She'd lived in New York for 2 years and never felt more trapped than she did right now, lying on a Mafia boss's couch with her secrets exposed. "I have a doctor coming," Roberto said, standing. He walked to his desk and picked up his phone, typing something quickly. "He'll check you over." "I don't need a doctor. You collapsed from malnutrition." He didn't look up from his phone. "You need a doctor. I can't afford— I'm paying." Haley pushed herself up on her elbows, despite the dizziness. "I don't want your money." That made him look at her. Really look at her. He set the phone down and crossed his arms, leaning back against the desk. "What do you want? To disappear? To rewind 8 months and never meet Derek? To stop being so tired all the time? To go home?" She said finally. "Where's home?" She didn't answer. Roberto studied her for another long moment, then walked back to the couch. This time he sat on the coffee table directly in front of her, close enough that their knees almost touched. He leaned forward, elbows on his thighs, hands clasped. "I'm going to ask you something," he said quietly. "And I need you to understand that I already know the answer. I just need to hear you say it." Haley's pulse quickened. "Are you safe where you're living?" The question hung in the air between them. Outside, thunder rolled across the sky. The rain intensified, drumming against the windows. "Yes," Haley whispered. Roberto's expression didn't change. "Try again." Her eyes burned. She looked down at her hands, at the bruises circling her wrists like ugly bracelets. "It's complicated." "It's not. You don't know anything about my life." "I know someone is hurting you," Roberto said, voice still quiet but edged with something sharp. "I know you're starving yourself to afford medication. I know you're covering bruises with long sleeves in August. I know you flinched when I reached for you." Haley felt something crack inside her chest, not breaking, just fracturing enough to let the truth leak out. "His name is Derek," she heard herself say. "We've been together 8 months. Roberto waited. "He wasn't always like this. In the beginning, he was just intense, protective. I thought it was romantic." She laughed, bitter and hollow. "Stupid, right?" "Not stupid," Roberto said. "Manipulated." The word settled over her like a weight. Manipulated. Not weak, not stupid. Manipulated. "When did it start?" Roberto asked. 3 months in. Small things first, checking my phone, wanting to know where I was. Then he started getting angry when I talked to other guys. Then he started getting angry about everything. She pulled her sleeves down, covering the evidence. Last month he started using cigarettes. Roberto's hands curled into fists. He didn't move otherwise, but Haley saw the violence coiled beneath his stillness. "You tried to leave," he said. "Twice. The first time he found me at my friend's apartment and dragged me back. The second time," her voice broke, "he has videos of me. Bad videos. He said if I leave again, he'll send them to everyone I know." "What kind of videos?" Haley closed her eyes. "The kind that ruin lives." Roberto stood abruptly. He walked to the windows, staring out at the rain-soaked city. His shoulders were rigid, hands shoved deep in his pockets. When he spoke again, his voice was colder than she'd ever heard. "You're not going back there. I have to." "No." He turned around. "You don't. That part of your life is over as of right now. You can't just decide that. Watch me." Before Haley could respond, a knock sounded at the door. Roberto crossed the room and opened it. An older man with silver hair and a leather medical bag stepped inside. He took one look at Haley on the couch, and his expression tightened. "This is Dr. Morrison," Roberto said. "He's going to examine you." The doctor approached gently, setting his bag on the coffee table. "Hello, Haley. I'm just going to check a few things, all right?" She nodded mutely. Roberto stepped back, giving them space, but he didn't leave. He stood near the desk, arms crossed, watching. Haley could feel his gaze like a physical pressure. Dr. Morrison worked efficiently. Blood pressure, heart rate, temperature. He examined her arms carefully, professional and detached. When he pressed gently on her ribs, she gasped. "Tender?" he asked. "A little." He nodded and made a note. After 10 minutes, he packed his bag and stood, walking over to Roberto. They spoke in low voices near the door. Haley caught fragments. Severely malnourished, dehydration, old fractures that didn't heal properly. Needs immediate. Roberto's jaw worked. He said something too quiet for her to hear. "Doctor." Morrison nodded and left. Roberto returned to the couch. He didn't sit this time. He stood over her, dark and immovable. "You're coming with me," he said. "Where?" "Somewhere safe. I told you, I can't just—" "Haley." He crouched down again, eye level. "I'm not asking. I'm telling you what's going to happen. You're going to let me take you somewhere Derek can't find you. You're going to eat. You're going to sleep. And while you're doing that, I'm going to handle your problem." "What does that mean?" His eyes held hers. "It means you're never going to see him again." Haley tried to stand the moment Roberto's words sank in. Her legs wobbled, but she forced herself upright, using the arm of the couch for support. "I appreciate what you're trying to do, but I need to leave." Roberto straightened slowly, positioning himself between her and the door. Not aggressive, just immovable. "You're not thinking clearly. I'm thinking perfectly clearly." Her voice shook despite her attempt at firmness. "Derek expects me home by midnight. If I'm not there, he'll what?" She couldn't finish the sentence. The images flooded her mind too quickly. Derek's face when he was angry, the way he checked her phone records, the time he locked her in the bathroom for 6 hours because she smiled at a delivery driver. "You don't understand how he is," Haley said desperately. "If he thinks I told someone, if he even suspects, I don't care what he suspects." Roberto's tone was flat, absolute. "You're not going back to him. You can't just kidnap me. I'm not kidnapping you. I'm protecting you. That's not your job." Something flickered across Roberto's face. "It is now." Haley moved toward the door anyway, testing him. She made it 2 steps before he shifted position, blocking her path without touching her. His presence alone was enough to stop her momentum. "Move," she said, hating how small her voice sounded. "No, I'll scream. Go ahead. This entire building belongs to me." Haley stared at him, frustration mixing with fear, mixing with something else she couldn't name. This man was a stranger, a dangerous stranger who ran an organization she didn't want to think too hard about. But he'd caught her when she fell. He'd called a doctor. He'd looked at her bruises with an expression that suggested he wanted to burn the world down. "Why do you care?" The question came out raw. Roberto's jaw tightened. "Because I've seen what happens when no one does." Before she could respond, he walked back to his desk and picked up his phone. He made a call, speaking in rapid Italian. Haley caught maybe 1 word in 10. When he hung up, he turned back to her. "My doctor will be back in 20 minutes. While we wait, you're going to sit down before you fall down again." "I'm fine standing." "You're swaying." She hated that he was right. Her knees felt like water. She lowered herself back onto the couch, pulling his jacket tighter around her shoulders. It smelled like expensive cologne, and something warmer, more subtle. Cedar, maybe. Roberto walked to a small bar cart in the corner and poured water into a glass. He brought it to her without comment. Haley took it, suddenly aware of how dry her throat was. She drank half of it before forcing herself to slow down. "When's the last time you had water?" Roberto asked, watching her. "This morning." He didn't call her a liar this time, but his expression said he didn't believe her. He sat in the leather chair across from the couch, leaning back, studying her like she was a puzzle he needed to solve. "Tell me about the phone," he said after a moment. Haley glanced down at her purse, where the outline of her cracked phone was visible through the fabric. "I dropped it. Try again." She closed her eyes. "He stepped on it. Last week. I said something he didn't like and he took my phone and stepped on it until the screen shattered. But you kept using it. I need it for work. I can't afford a new one." Roberto pulled out his own phone, sleek and expensive, and typed something. "You'll have a new one tomorrow. I don't want your charity." "It's not charity. It's basic necessity." He set his phone aside. "Tell me about the clothes." Haley looked down at herself. 3 layers, like he said. A tank top, a long-sleeve shirt, and a cardigan, despite the August heat that made the club feel like a sauna. "I get cold easily. You're covering the bruises." It wasn't a question. She didn't bother denying it. Roberto leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "Does anyone else know? Friends? Family?" "I don't have friends anymore. Derek didn't like them." "Family?" Haley's throat tightened. "I have a younger brother. Ryan. He's 21, studying engineering at Columbia. He's on scholarship, working 2 jobs to cover what the scholarship doesn't. He can't know about any of this." "Why not?" "Because he'll try to help, and Derek will—" She stopped, swallowing hard. "Derek has videos of me. He said if I tell anyone, if I try to leave, he'll send them to Ryan. He'll ruin my brother's life just to hurt me." Roberto's expression went dangerously still. "What kind of videos?" Haley forced herself to meet his eyes. 6 months ago, Derek started giving me pills. He said they were for anxiety. I didn't know they were something else until I was already dependent. One night I was so out of it I couldn't stand. He recorded it. Recorded me saying things, doing things I don't even remember. He has maybe a dozen videos like that. Where does he keep them? His laptop, his phone, a cloud server somewhere. He showed me once, made sure I understood he had backups. Roberto stood abruptly and walked back to the windows. He stood there for a long time, hands in his pockets, shoulders rigid. When he spoke, his voice was so controlled it was almost frightening. "Here's what's going to happen. In a few minutes, 2 of my men are going to arrive. You're going to go with them to an apartment I own. It's secure. No one knows about it except people I trust completely. You'll stay there while I deal with Derek. You can't just—" "I can." He turned around. "And I will. This isn't negotiable, Haley. He'll know I'm gone. He'll release the videos. He won't have time." The certainty in his voice made her breath catch. "What are you going to do to him?" "Nothing he doesn't deserve." "That's not an answer." Roberto crossed the room and crouched in front of her again, close enough that she could see the flecks of gold in his dark eyes. "Do you want to know the truth?" She nodded, even though part of her didn't. "I'm going to find him. I'm going to recover every single one of those videos. And I'm going to make absolutely certain he never touches you again. That's all you need to know. And if you can't find all the videos, I will. But if you can't—" "Haley." He reached out slowly and took her hand. His palm was warm, calloused. "I don't fail at things that matter. And this matters." She wanted to argue. Wanted to tell him this was insane, that she couldn't just abandon her entire life because a stranger told her to. But the truth was, her life had stopped being hers months ago. Derek owned every hour of her day, every dollar she earned, every breath she took. Maybe letting go was the only way to survive. "What about my job?" she asked, voice breaking. "You're not going back there either. I'll handle it. My apartment, my things. My men will get whatever you need. You just have to tell them where and what. Derek lives with me. He'll be there." "Good." Roberto's expression was carved from stone. "That'll make it easier." A knock sounded at the door. Roberto stood and opened it. 2 men entered, both broad-shouldered and alert. They looked at Haley with carefully neutral expressions. "This is Luca and Vincent," Roberto said. They're going to take you somewhere safe. Haley stood on shaking legs. I don't know if I can do this. You can. Roberto picked up his jacket from where it had fallen and draped it back over her shoulders. And you will. Because the alternative is going back to him, and that's not happening. She looked up at him. This dangerous man who'd decided to save her for reasons she didn't understand. Why are you doing this? His jaw worked. For a moment she thought he wouldn't answer. Then he said quietly, because someone should have done it for my sister. And no one did. The words hit her like a physical blow. Before she could ask what he meant, he turned to Luca. Take her to the Parkside apartment. Stay with her. No one goes in or out without my approval. Yes, boss. Roberto looked back at Haley. Go with them. I'll check on you tomorrow. What if Derek finds me? He won't. I promise you, Haley. He won't. She wanted to believe him. Desperately wanted to believe that someone could actually protect her. Luca stepped forward, offering his arm like a gentleman. Haley took it, still clutching Roberto's jacket around her shoulders. As they walked toward the door, she looked back. Roberto stood in the center of his office, hands clenched at his sides, watching her leave with an expression that suggested he was already planning violence. And for the first time in 8 months, Haley felt something other than fear. She felt hope. 14 days felt like 14 years. Haley sat on the edge of the bed in the Parkside apartment, staring at the white walls that had become her entire world. The space was modern and sterile, all clean lines and empty surfaces. A prison made of safety. The first 5 nights she hadn't slept at all. She'd sat in the corner of the bedroom with her back against the wall, watching the door, waiting for Derek to kick it open. Every sound in the hallway made her flinch. Every car door slamming outside sent her heart racing. By the 3rd day, Luca had stopped trying to convince her to rest. But Derek never came. Roberto did. Every morning at 9, like clockwork, he arrived with food. The first time, he'd brought soup and bread from an Italian restaurant. Haley had stared at it like it might be poisoned. You need to eat, he'd said, setting the containers on the small kitchen table. I'm not hungry. You're starving. She turned away from him, arms wrapped around herself. Roberto had stood there for a full minute before leaving the food and walking out without another word. The next morning he came back with scrambled eggs and fruit. She didn't touch those either. He left them on the counter and departed. On the 4th day, he brought pancakes. Haley had been standing at the window, looking down at the street below, when the smell hit her. Sweet and buttery, and so achingly normal, it made her chest hurt. They're from a diner 3 blocks over, Roberto had said quietly. The owner is from Sicily. She makes them the way my grandmother used to. Haley had eaten half of one after he left. By the 5th day, she was eating whatever he brought. Now, 2 weeks in, she actually looked forward to his visits, not just for the food, but for the way he filled the silence. He never stayed long, maybe 20 minutes. He'd ask how she slept, if she needed anything, whether Luca or Vincent were treating her well. Simple questions that didn't require her to think too hard. The knock came at exactly 9 o'clock. Haley stood and smoothed down her shirt, one of 3 Roberto had sent over from her apartment. Luca had retrieved her things while Derek was at work. She tried not to think about what would happen when Derek noticed her clothes were gone. She opened the door. Roberto stood in the hallway holding a paper bag and 2 coffee cups. He looked tired, she realized. Dark circles under his eyes, hair not quite as perfectly styled as usual. His white shirt had wrinkles near the collar. Morning, he said. Good morning. He stepped inside and she closed the door behind him. They'd developed a routine. He set the food on the table while she got plates from the cabinet. Today it was croissants and some kind of pastry she didn't recognize. Sfogliatelle, Roberto said, noticing her looking. Ricotta filling. Try it. She sat across from him and pulled one of the pastries toward her. The first bite was sweet and rich, layers of crispy dough giving way to creamy cheese. Despite everything, she almost smiled. Roberto watched her eat for a moment before speaking. We need to talk about Derek. Her appetite vanished instantly. She set down the pastry, hands suddenly shaking. Did he find me? No. We found him. Haley's breath caught. And? Roberto leaned back in his chair, fingers drumming once against the table before going still. He's been at your apartment every day. going through your things, looking for clues about where you went. My men have been watching him. The videos. That's the complicated part. Roberto's jaw tightened. He has multiple backups. His laptop, his phone, and at least 3 different cloud servers. We've identified 2 of them. The third is proving difficult to track. Panic clawed up Haley's throat. So he could still release them. He could still send them to Ryan. He could, but he won't. How do you know? Because he thinks you left the state. Haley stared at him. What? Roberto pulled out his phone and showed her a screenshot. A bus ticket purchased in her name. Destination Miami. Departing the night she disappeared. My men planted evidence. Bought the ticket with cash at the terminal. Made sure the security footage would show someone matching your description buying it. Created email trails suggesting you were planning to run. Derek's been calling Miami shelters looking for you. He fell for that? Men like Derek aren't as smart as they think they are. He's arrogant. He believes you're too scared to do anything except run as far as possible. Haley pressed her palms flat against the table, trying to keep them from trembling. How long until you find the 3rd server? My tech people are working on it. Could be days. Could be weeks. These things take time if we want to do them without alerting him. Weeks? Her voice cracked. I can't stay here for weeks. I'll lose my mind. You're safe here. I'm trapped here. She stood abruptly, chair scraping against the floor. I can't work. Can't see my brother. Can't do anything except sit in this apartment and wait for you to solve my problems. Roberto remained seated, watching her with that unreadable expression. Would you rather be back with Derek? Of course not. Then this is what safety looks like. It's not exciting. It's not comfortable. But it's necessary. Haley turned away from him, walking to the window. The street below was busy with morning traffic, people heading to jobs and lives that didn't involve hiding from violent men. She pressed her forehead against the cool glass. I don't understand why you're doing this, she said quietly. Behind her, Roberto was silent for a long moment. Then his chair scraped. Footsteps approached. He stopped a few feet away, close but not crowding. I told you. I've seen what happens when no one helps. That's not a real answer. It's the only one I have. She turned to face him. You said something about your sister. The night you brought me here. You said someone should have helped her. Roberto's expression shuddered immediately. That's not relevant. It is to me. Haley, please. She met his eyes. I need to understand. You're turning my entire life upside down, risking whatever you're risking to help me. I need to know why. He stared at her for a long time. She watched the internal battle play out across his features, the way his jaw worked, the way his hands curled into fists before deliberately relaxing. Finally, he walked back to the table and sat down heavily. Her name was Sophia. Haley returned to her chair, sitting across from him. She was my baby sister, 17 years old when it happened. 5 years ago this past June. Roberto's voice was carefully controlled, each word measured. She called me on a Tuesday afternoon. I was in Rome handling a business situation. She said her boyfriend had hit her. Said she was scared. Haley's heart clenched. I'd met the boyfriend once. College kid. Seemed harmless. I figured it was teenage drama. Kids fighting about stupid things. I told Sophia I'd deal with it when I got back to New York. Told her to stay with a friend until then. Roberto. I got back 4 days later. His eyes were distant now, seeing something she couldn't. My mother called while I was still at the airport. Sophia was dead. Her boyfriend had shown up at the friend's house, convinced Sophia to talk to him outside, beat her to death in the parking lot. The words hung in the air like broken glass. I'm so sorry, Haley whispered. Roberto's hands were flat on the table now, knuckles white. I should have come home immediately. Should have believed her. Should have put her on a plane to Rome if I couldn't come back right away. But I didn't. I thought I had time. It wasn't your fault, wasn't it? His eyes snapped to hers. She called for help and I dismissed her. I let her die because I thought I knew better. Haley reached across the table slowly and placed her hand over his. He went very still, staring at the contact like he'd forgotten what comfort looked like. You didn't kill her, Haley said firmly. He did. The man who hurt her. That's who's responsible. I could have prevented it. Maybe. Or maybe he would have found another way. Men like that always do. She squeezed his hand gently. You can't save her now, but you're trying to save me. That has to count for something. Roberto turned his hand over, palm up, and threaded his fingers through hers. The gesture was tentative, almost fragile, coming from a man who radiated power. After Sophia died, I started funding a shelter, he said quietly, for women trying to leave violent situations. I made sure every woman in my organization knew they could come to me if someone was hurting them. I promised myself I'd never ignore another call for help. That's why you caught me when I fell. That's why I'm not letting you go back to him. Ever. They sat like that for several minutes, hands linked across the table, the morning light streaming through the windows. Haley felt something shift between them. Not attraction, not yet. Something deeper. Recognition. He saw her pain because he carried his own. She understood his guilt because she knew what it felt like to blame yourself for someone else's violence. I miss my brother, Haley said eventually. Ryan doesn't know where I am. He's probably worried sick. You can't contact him. Not until we resolve this. I know. But it hurts. Roberto nodded slowly. When this is over, when Derek is handled and the videos are destroyed, I'll make sure your brother knows you're safe. I promise you that. You keep making promises. I keep them too. She believed him. That was the terrifying part. This man, this dangerous stranger who operated outside every law she'd ever known, felt more trustworthy than anyone she'd met in years. What happens now? Haley asked. Now you wait. I know that's not what you want to hear, but it's the truth. My people are working around the clock to find that third server. Once we have it, we move on Derek. And then you're free. The word sounded impossible. Freedom. She'd forgotten what that felt like. Roberto stood, releasing her hand with what seemed like reluctance. I should go. I have meetings this afternoon. Will you come back tomorrow? Do you want me to? Yes. Something in his expression softened. Then I will. He walked to the door, then paused with his hand on the knob. Haley, the nightmares you've been having. Luca mentioned you wake up screaming sometimes. Heat flooded her cheeks. She hadn't realized anyone could hear. I'm sorry. I don't mean to. Don't apologize. I just want you to know that what you're feeling is normal. What he did to you, it doesn't just disappear because you're somewhere safe now. It takes time to heal. How much time? Roberto's smile was sad. I'll let you know when I figure it out. After he left, Haley sat at the table for a long time, staring at the half-eaten pastries. For the first time since this started, she felt like maybe she wasn't alone. Maybe there was someone who understood what it meant to carry the weight of violence you didn't commit but couldn't escape. She picked up her coffee and walked back to the window, watching the city move below her. Somewhere out there, Derek was searching in the wrong direction. Somewhere, Roberto's people were working to free her from digital chains. And somewhere deep inside herself, Haley felt the first tiny spark of belief that this might actually end without her being destroyed. 6 weeks after the night she collapsed, Haley stood in Roberto's office again. But this time she wasn't broken and starving. This time she was standing on her own 2 feet, watching him type commands into a laptop she didn't understand. Are you ready? Roberto asked without looking up from the screen. Haley's hands twisted together. What happens if something goes wrong? Nothing will go wrong. My people are the best. You keep saying that. Because it's true. He finally looked at her, dark eyes steady. We found the third server yesterday. It took longer than I wanted, but we found it. 1 month. That's how long it had taken his team of hackers to track down every digital copy of the videos Derek had used to control her. Roberto had explained the technical details once. Something about encrypted cloud storage and tracing digital footprints through offshore servers. Haley had stopped listening after the first 5 minutes. All that mattered was the result. Roberto turned the laptop toward her. The screen showed a file directory with dozens of video files, each one marked with a date. Haley's stomach turned, seeing them listed like inventory items. These are from his laptop, Roberto said. We accessed it remotely 3 days ago while he was at work. Watch. He clicked a command. One by one, the files began disappearing. Not moved to a trash folder. Completely erased. The data overwritten with random code that made recovery impossible. His phone, Roberto said, pulling up another window. The same process. Files vanishing like they'd never existed. First cloud server. Another window. More deletions. Second server. Gone. Third server. The final batch disappeared. Haley watched the last file vanish from the screen and felt something inside her chest crack open. Not breaking. Releasing. She pressed both hands over her mouth as tears spilled down her cheeks. They're gone, Roberto said quietly. Every copy. Every backup. Every fragment. I had 3 different tech specialists verify it. Derek has nothing. The sob that escaped her was part relief, part disbelief. She'd spent 8 months believing those videos would haunt her forever, that Derek would always have power over her. And now, in the span of 60 seconds, that power had been erased. Roberto stood and walked around the desk. He didn't touch her, just stood close, giving her space to break down without being alone. How much did this cost you? Haley asked through her tears. It doesn't matter. Roberto, please. I need to know. He hesitated, then sighed. $50,000. Her knees went weak. 50,000. Specialized hackers don't work cheap, particularly when the job requires complete discretion and 0 digital footprint. Haley wiped at her face with shaking hands. I'll pay you back. I don't know how long it'll take, but I swear I'll... No, I can't just accept... Haley. His voice was firm. You're not paying me back. This isn't a loan. It's a problem that needed solving. That's not fair to you. I don't care about fair. I care about you being free. She looked up at him. This man who'd spent a fortune to save someone he barely knew. What about Derek? Does he know the videos are gone? Not yet. But he will. Roberto walked back to his desk and picked up a folder, handing it to her. This is what happens to Derek. Haley opened it. Inside were police documents, arrest records, and what looked like a court docket. She scanned the pages, trying to make sense of the legal language. He was arrested 4 days ago, Roberto explained. Possession of controlled substances with intent to distribute. 3 illegal firearms found in his apartment. And it turns out Derek violated parole from a previous conviction I discovered during our research. You planted the drugs, Haley said. It wasn't a question. Roberto's expression didn't change. I didn't say that. You didn't deny it either. Do you want me to deny it? Haley stared at the arrest record. Derek's mugshot showed him looking furious and bewildered. How long will he be in prison? His lawyer is trying to negotiate, but with the parole violation and the quantity of drugs involved, minimum 8 years, likely closer to 12. 12 years. Derek would be in his 40s when he got out. She'd be in her late 30s, living a completely different life. The relief was so intense it made her dizzy. He can't hurt me anymore, she whispered. No, he can't. Haley closed the folder and set it on the desk, hands still trembling. I don't know how to thank you. You don't need to thank me. You need to figure out what comes next. What do you mean? Roberto leaned against the desk, arms crossed. You can't go back to the club. Too many people there know your connection to Derek. And you need real work, something that pays better than making drinks for entitled businessmen. I don't have any other skills. That's not true. You managed that apartment I put you in. Kept it organized, tracked what supplies you needed, made lists. Luca said you were meticulous about everything. That's just basic. It's more than basic. Roberto pulled out his phone and scrolled through something. I own a restaurant. Italian place in Midtown, legitimate business, no connection to anything else I do. They need someone to manage inventory, handle supplier orders, track costs. $4,500 a month plus health insurance. Haley's mouth fell open. That's 3 times what I made at the club. The club was paying you poverty wages. This is what the job actually pays. I don't know anything about restaurant management. You'll learn. My manager will train you. The question is whether you want it. Did she want it? A real job with real pay, doing something other than dodging drunk customers and watching her back? Of course she wanted it. Yes, Haley said. Yes, I want it. Roberto nodded once. You start Monday. I'll have someone show you the systems. 2 weeks later, Haley sat in the back office of Bella Notte, surrounded by spreadsheets and invoices. The restaurant was beautiful, all warm lighting and exposed brick. The kind of place where businessmen took clients and couples celebrated anniversaries. She'd been terrified her first day, convinced she'd mess everything up within hours. Instead, she'd found something unexpected. She was good at this. Managing inventory came naturally to her. She liked the logic of it, the way numbers told stories if you knew how to read them. Within 3 days, she'd reorganized the entire storage system. Within a week, she'd caught 2 errors in supplier invoices that would have cost the restaurant money. Now, staring at the delivery records from the past 18 months, she'd found something much bigger. "Marco," she called to the restaurant manager, a cheerful man in his 50s who'd been patient with all her questions. "Can you look at something?" Marco came over, wiping flour from his hands. "What is it?" Haley pointed to her screen. "Our supplier for olive oil and balsamic vinegar. Look at what we're being charged versus what we're actually receiving." Marco leaned closer, squinting at the numbers. "I don't see the problem. The invoices say we're getting premium imported oil, $18 per liter. But when I checked the bottles in storage yesterday, they're domestic blend, worth maybe $6 per liter. Someone's been substituting cheap product and pocketing the difference." Marco's eyes widened. "For how long?" 18 months. I calculated the total. We've overpaid by nearly $40,000. Madonna. Marco pulled out his phone. "I need to call Roberto." 20 minutes later, Roberto walked through the restaurant's front door. Haley met him in the office, where she'd laid out all her evidence. Spreadsheets, photos of the actual products, invoices highlighted in 3 different colors. Roberto studied everything in silence for several minutes. When he finally looked up, there was something like pride in his expression. "You found this in 2 weeks? I noticed the discrepancy last week, but I wanted to be sure before I said anything. I checked every delivery for the past 1.5 years. The pattern is consistent." "Who's the supplier?" "Vincent Brothers Distribution. They handle our olive oil, vinegars, and some specialty items." Roberto pulled out his phone and made a call, speaking in rapid Italian. Haley caught enough words to understand he was very angry. When he hung up, he turned back to her. "I'll handle this personally. What are you going to do?" "Renegotiate our contract." His tone suggested the negotiation would not be pleasant. "You did excellent work, Haley. This is exactly the kind of attention to detail I need. I just did my job. Most people wouldn't have noticed. They'd have assumed the invoices were correct and never verified the actual product. My brother taught me to always check the math. He said numbers don't lie, people do." Something flickered across Roberto's face at the mention of her brother. "How is Ryan?" "I don't know." The admission hurt. "I still can't contact him. I don't want to risk Derek having any way to track me back to the people I care about. Derek is in prison, but his friends aren't. He knows people who could hurt Ryan if they wanted to send me a message." Roberto was quiet for a moment, then nodded. "You're right to be careful. Give it another month. Once the trial is over and Derek is officially sentenced, we'll make sure Ryan knows you're safe." "Another month," Haley repeated. She'd already been cut off from her brother for 6 weeks. Another month felt impossible. "I know it's hard," Roberto said, "but it's necessary." He left shortly after, taking all her documentation about the supplier fraud with him. Marco returned to the kitchen, shaking his head in amazement. Haley sat at the desk, staring at the now empty spreadsheet. She'd found $40,000 in fraud in 2 weeks. What else could she find if she kept looking? The thought excited her in a way she hadn't expected. For the first time in years, she felt useful, competent, like her brain was good for something other than surviving. 3 days later, Marco pulled her aside during the lunch rush. Roberto dealt with Vincent Brothers. "And? They're no longer our supplier, and they refunded every cent they overcharged us, all $40,000. Haley blinked. "How did he manage that?" Marco gave her a knowing look. "Roberto has persuasive methods." She decided not to ask for details. Some things were better left unknown. That evening, as she was closing up the office, her phone rang. Roberto's name appeared on the screen. She'd gotten used to his calls over the past month. Quick check-ins to make sure she was adjusting to the job. "Hello? How do you feel about being permanently assigned to fraud detection?" Roberto asked without preamble. Haley laughed. Is that a real position? It is now. You have a talent for finding problems. I want to use it. In the restaurant? In all my legitimate businesses. Restaurants, real estate holdings, import companies. You'd review their books, look for discrepancies, make sure no one's stealing from me. You're offering me a promotion after 2 weeks? I'm offering you a job that matches your skills. Different pay scale, too. $6,000 a month. Haley sat down hard in the office chair. $6,000. She'd never made that much money in her life. Why are you doing this? She asked. Because you're good at it. Because I need someone I can trust. And because you deserve a chance to build something better than what you had. She thought about Derek, locked in a cell somewhere. She thought about the videos, erased from existence. She thought about Sophia, the girl who never got a second chance. Okay, Haley said. I'll do it. Good. We'll start next week. After he hung up, Haley sat in the quiet office, surrounded by the smell of garlic and tomato sauce drifting from the kitchen. Her life had been destroyed 6 weeks ago, but somehow, in the wreckage, she was building something new. 10 weeks had passed since the night Roberto caught her falling. Haley sat at her new desk in a small office adjacent to Bella Nore, reviewing financial statements for one of Roberto's import companies. The numbers blurred together as exhaustion pulled at her concentration. She'd slept maybe 3 hours last night. The nightmare had been worse than usual, vivid and suffocating. Derek's hands around her throat, the smell of cigarette smoke, her own voice begging him to stop. A sharp sound from the kitchen, metal clattering against tile, made her entire body lock up. Her heart hammered against her ribs. Her breathing went shallow and quick. She knew logically it was just Marco dropping a pan, but her nervous system didn't care about logic. It took 2 full minutes for her pulse to return to normal. This kept happening. Sudden noises, men standing too close, the smell of a specific brand of aftershave that Derek used to wear. Each trigger sent her spiraling back to that apartment, to those 8 months of carefully managed terror. Roberto had noticed. Of course he had. The man noticed everything. He'd started showing up more frequently over the past few weeks, always with some excuse. Checking on the new fraud detection protocols, reviewing quarterly reports, making sure she had everything she needed. But Haley saw through it. He was checking on her, not the work. She appreciated it more than she could say. That night, Haley returned to her apartment, the real one Roberto had helped her find after she left the Parkside safe house. 1 bedroom, 5th floor, doorman building with actual security. She could afford it now with her new salary. The space was hers in a way nothing had been hers in a long time. She made dinner, ate half of it, and tried to watch television. But her mind kept drifting. By 11, she was in bed. Door open, hallway light on. The darkness felt too heavy otherwise, too much like being trapped. Sleep came slowly, reluctantly, and with it, the dreams. Derek's face looming over hers, his fist connecting with her ribs. The sound of her own crying, the taste of blood, the weight of his body pinning her down while she struggled and failed and broke apart. Haley woke up screaming. She sat bolt upright in bed, chest heaving, tears streaming down her face. The bedroom was empty. She was alone. Derek was in prison. She knew these things, but her body vibrated with terror anyway, convinced the threat was real and immediate. Her phone sat on the nightstand. She grabbed it with shaking hands and pulled up Roberto's contact information. Her thumb hovered over the call button. It was 3 a.m. He'd told her to call if she needed anything, but this felt different. This felt like admitting weakness, like proving she was still broken. Another sob tore through her chest. She pressed call before she could change her mind. Roberto answered on the second ring, voice alert despite the hour. Haley? What's wrong? I'm sorry, she managed through tears. I'm sorry, I shouldn't have called, Where are you? Home. My apartment. I'm fine. I just had a nightmare and I can't. Lock your door. I'm on my way. Roberto, you don't have to. Lock your door, he repeated, and hung up. Haley dragged herself out of bed and went to the front door, checking the deadbolt twice. Then she sat on the couch, wrapped in a blanket, trying to stop shaking. 15 minutes later, a knock sounded. She checked the peephole and saw Roberto standing in the hallway. He wore jeans and a plain black t-shirt, hair slightly messy like he'd just rolled out of bed. She'd never seen him look so casual. She opened the door. Roberto stepped inside, taking in her tear-stained face, the blanket clutched around her shoulders, the way she was still trembling. He closed the door quietly behind him. "Tell me what you need," he said. "I don't know." Her voice broke. "I just didn't want to be alone." He guided her back to the couch, sitting beside her but leaving space between them. "Do you want to talk about it?" She shook her head. "Talking about the nightmare would just make it more real." "Okay, then we won't talk." They sat in silence for several minutes. Gradually, Haley's breathing evened out. The panic receded, leaving exhaustion in its wake. She pulled the blanket tighter, suddenly aware of how ridiculous this was. A grown woman calling a mafia boss in the middle of the night because she'd had a bad dream. "I'm sorry," she said again. "You have important things to do. You don't need to babysit me. There's nothing more important than this." The certainty in his voice made her throat tight. She looked at him, really looked at him. Dark circles shadowed his eyes. His jaw carried the stubble of someone who hadn't bothered shaving. He looked as tired as she felt. "When do you sleep?" she asked. "Not often." "Nightmares?" "Memories." He leaned back against the couch, stretching his legs out. "They're different, but they do the same thing." Haley shifted slightly closer. "Will you stay? Just until I fall asleep? I'll stay as long as you need." She lay down on the couch, head on a pillow, blanket pulled up to her chin. Roberto remained sitting, one arm resting along the back of the couch, watching over her like a guard on duty. "Thank you," Haley whispered. "Sleep, Haley." She closed her eyes. And somehow, with him there, sleep came easier. When she woke in the morning, sunlight streaming through the windows, Roberto was still there. He'd moved to the armchair across from the couch, phone in hand, reading something. He looked up when she stirred. "Morning," he said quietly. "You stayed all night." "I said I would." Haley sat up, pushing hair out of her face. "You must be exhausted." "I'm fine." He stood, pocketing his phone. "I should go. I have a meeting at 9. "Roberto, wait." She stood too, blanket falling away. "Why do you keep doing this, taking care of me?" "I told you why. Because of your sister." "I know, but it feels like more than that." He was quiet for a long moment, studying her face. Then he walked to the window, looking out at the city waking up below them. "Can I show you something?" he asked. "Of course." He pulled out his phone and scrolled through photos before handing it to her. The screen showed a teenage girl with long dark hair and a bright smile, wearing a yellow sundress, laughing at whoever was taking the picture. "That's Sophia," Roberto said. 3 weeks before she died. Haley stared at the photo. The girl looked so alive, so full of light. It was impossible to reconcile that image with what she knew had happened. "She looks happy," Haley said softly. She was, before him. Roberto took the phone back, looking at the photo like it physically hurt. "I keep her room exactly as she left it. Her books on the shelves, her clothes in the closet. My mother thinks it's unhealthy. Maybe it is. But I can't bring myself to change anything." "Where is it?" "The room? My penthouse. Top floor of a building downtown. I bought the entire floor after she died. Needed space that didn't have her ghost in every corner." Haley moved closer to him, standing beside him at the window. "Do you visit her grave?" "First Sunday of every month. I bring her favorite flowers, sunflowers. She said they looked like happiness." His jaw worked. "I also fund a shelter for women trying to leave violent relationships. It's called Sophia's House. We've helped 237 women in 5 years." The number hit Haley hard. 237 women who got the help Sophia never did. "That's incredible," she said. "It's not enough. It'll never be enough. But it's something." He turned to face her. "You're part of that something now. Every time I help someone escape what you escaped, I feel like maybe Sophia's death wasn't completely meaningless. Is that what I am to you? A way to make peace with losing her?" Roberto's expression shifted, becoming more vulnerable than she'd ever seen. "At first, maybe. When I caught you falling and saw those bruises, all I could think about was how I failed Sophia. How I couldn't fail again." He paused. "But it's different now." "How?" "Because you're not just someone who needed saving. You're Haley. You're smart and stubborn, and you make me laugh when I forget how. You found $40,000 in fraud in 2 weeks. You call me at 3 a.m. when you're scared and trust me enough to fall asleep with me in the room. That's not about Sophia anymore. That's about you." Haley's heart was beating too fast. "Roberto, I'm not saying this to make you uncomfortable. I just need you to know that helping you, it's not obligation. It's not guilt. It's because you matter to me." She didn't know what to say, didn't know how to process the weight of his words or the way they made her feel. So instead she asked, "Will you tell me more about her? About Sophia?" Relief flickered across his face, grateful she wasn't running from what he'd just admitted. "What do you want to know?" "Everything." They sat back down on the couch and Roberto talked. About Sophia's love for terrible romantic comedies. About how she wanted to be a teacher. About the time she convinced him to go to a Justin Bieber concert, and he spent 2 hours surrounded by screaming teenagers. About her laugh, her stubbornness, the way she called him Robbie even though he hated it. Haley listened, watching the way his face transformed when he spoke about his sister. The grief was still there, sharp and permanent. But so was love. So much love it filled the room. "She would have liked you," Roberto said eventually. "She always said I needed someone who wouldn't put up with my control issues." Haley smiled. "I don't put up with them? You told me to stop being so bossy within the first week." "You were being bossy." "I know. That's why she would have liked you." They fell into comfortable silence. The morning stretched on. Roberto's phone buzzed several times, but he ignored it. "You're going to be late for your meeting," Haley said. "They'll wait." "That's very boss of you." He almost smiled. "I should go anyway." "But Haley?" "Yeah? Next time you have a nightmare, call me. Don't hesitate. Don't apologize, just call." "Okay." After he left, Haley stood in her apartment, processing everything. The way he'd come without question. The way he'd stayed all night. The way he'd opened up about Sophia like sharing her memory with Haley was natural. And she realized, with terrifying clarity, that her feelings had changed. Somewhere between him catching her when she fell and him sitting guard while she slept, gratitude had transformed into something deeper. Something dangerous. She was falling for Roberto Zanarello. She didn't know if it was healthy. Didn't know if she could trust her own emotions after everything Derek had done to twist her sense of self. But she knew that when Roberto looked at her, she felt seen. When he spoke, she felt heard. When he promised to protect her, she believed him. Maybe that was transference. Maybe it was just her broken heart latching onto the first person who showed her kindness. Or maybe it was real. Haley walked to her bedroom and looked at the unmade bed where she'd woken up screaming hours ago. The nightmares would keep coming. The triggers would keep hitting. Healing wasn't linear, wasn't quick, wasn't easy. But for the first time since Derek, she felt like maybe she wasn't healing alone. 4 months had passed since Roberto caught Haley falling in the club. She stood in front of her bathroom mirror, adjusting the deep burgundy dress she'd bought for tonight. It was the first time she'd worn anything this nice since before Derek. The fabric hugged her body in ways that made her both nervous and proud. Roberto was taking her to dinner. Not to discuss work or check on her recovery. An actual dinner at one of the upscale restaurants his associates frequented. He'd been careful when he asked, making it clear she could say no without consequences. She'd said yes immediately. The past month had shifted things between them. After the night he stayed through her nightmare, he'd started coming by her apartment more frequently. Sometimes with food, sometimes just to sit and talk. They'd fallen into an easy rhythm that felt natural, comfortable. She'd catch herself watching him when he wasn't looking, noticing the way his eyes crinkled when he actually laughed, the way his shoulders relaxed around her in ways they never did anywhere else. A knock at her door made her jump slightly. She grabbed her purse and opened it to find Roberto standing in the hallway, wearing a charcoal suit that probably cost more than her monthly rent. His dark eyes swept over her, lingering on the dress before meeting her gaze. "You look beautiful," he said simply. Heat crept up her neck. "Thank you. You clean up well yourself." The corner of his mouth lifted. "I try." The restaurant was called Palazzo, all marble columns and crystal chandeliers. A hostess led them to a private table near the back where they could see the entire room but maintain some privacy. Roberto held out her chair before sitting across from her. Haley picked up the menu, and her eyes widened at the prices. Appetizers started at $45. "Order whatever you want," Roberto said, not looking at his own menu. "I already know what I'm getting." "The veal?" "How did you know?" "You always order veal when we eat Italian." He looked surprised. "You pay attention. You notice everything about me," seemed fair to return the favor. Something warm flickered in his expression. Before he could respond, a server appeared to take their drink orders. Roberto chose wine she'd never heard of. She asked for the same. As they waited for their food, Haley watched the restaurant fill with well-dressed couples and business groups. Several people glanced their way, recognition dawning when they spotted Roberto. A few nodded respectfully. Most quickly looked away. "Do they know who you are?" Haley asked quietly. "Some do. Others just know I'm someone they shouldn't bother. Must be lonely." Roberto considered that. It can be. But tonight it's not. Their food arrived, and they fell into easy conversation. Haley told him about a discrepancy she'd found in one of his real estate holdings, someone padding construction invoices. Roberto asked questions that showed he actually cared about her analysis, not just the bottom line. Halfway through dinner, a man approached their table. Tall, late 40s, expensive suit, artificial warmth radiating from his practiced smile. Haley felt Roberto tense immediately. "Roberto," the man said, voice too friendly. "I didn't know you'd be here tonight." "Paolo." Roberto's tone was perfectly neutral. "Enjoying your meal?" "Very much." "And who is this lovely companion?" Paolo's eyes slid to Haley with calculated interest. "This is Haley Morgan. She works for me." Business dinner then." Paolo extended his hand to Haley. "Paolo Grimaldiro, an old friend of Roberto's." Haley shook his hand briefly, noting the way Roberto's jaw tightened at the word friend. "Nice to meet you. The pleasure is mine. Roberto, we should talk soon. I have some proposals I'd like to discuss. Have your people call mine." Paolo's smile didn't waver, but his eyes hardened slightly. "Of course. Enjoy your evening." After he walked away, Haley leaned forward. "Who was that, really?" Roberto took a sip of wine before answering. "Paolo runs a faction within my organization. We have an arrangement. He controls certain territories. I control others. We cooperate when it benefits us both." "But you don't trust him." "Not even a little. Paolo wants more power than he has. He's ambitious in ways that make him dangerous. Why keep him around? Because removing him would start a war I don't want. Better to keep him close where I can watch him." Roberto set down his glass. "Don't worry about Paolo. He knows better than to cross certain lines." Haley wasn't so sure, but she let it drop. They finished dinner, Roberto insisting on dessert even though she was already full. By the time they left, it was after 10, and the city streets buzzed with nightlife. Roberto's driver pulled up, but Roberto waved him off. "We'll walk. It's only a few blocks." They strolled through the warm September evening, Haley acutely aware of Roberto's hand at the small of her back, guiding her around pedestrians. When they reached her building, she turned to face him. "Thank you for tonight." "I had a really good time." "So did I." He studied her face, hesitating like he wanted to say more. Then he simply added, "Sleep well, Haley." She watched him walk back to where his car waited, something warm and uncertain settling in her chest. 2 nights later, Haley was closing Bella Notte alone. Marco had left early for a family emergency, and the evening staff had already gone. She was in the back office, finishing inventory counts, when she heard the rear delivery door open. Her first thought was that Marco had forgotten something. She stood, walking toward the kitchen. "Marco, did you—" 3 men stood just inside the door. Not employees, not customers. They wore dark clothes, faces hard, posture radiating threat. Haley's blood went cold. Her hand moved instinctively toward her phone in her pocket. "Don't," one of them said, stepping forward. He was broad-shouldered, late 30s, with a scar running through his left eyebrow. "We just want to talk." "The restaurant is closed." Her voice came out steadier than she felt. "You need to leave. We're not here for food." Another man moved to block her exit. "We have questions about your boss, Roberto." They wanted information about Roberto. "I just manage inventory," Haley said carefully. "I don't know anything about Mr. Zanarello's business." The scarred man smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "That's not what we heard. We heard you're special to him. That means you see things, hear things. I stock pasta and count wine bottles. That's it. Come on, sweetheart. We know you're smart. You found that supplier fraud. You review financial records. You must see where the money goes." Haley's mind raced. These men knew too much about her work. Someone had been feeding them information. Who sent you? Someone who wants to know about Zanarello's offshore accounts, his federal contacts, the judges he's paying. Little details like that. "I don't know anything about that." The scarred man's expression hardened. He moved closer, crowding her space. "I think you do." Haley stepped back, bumping into a steel prep table. "I'm telling you the truth. I don't have access to that information." "Then maybe we need to persuade you to ask for it." His hand shot out, gripping her upper arm hard enough to hurt. The world tilted. Suddenly, Haley wasn't in the restaurant kitchen. She was back in her old apartment. Derek's fingers digging into her arm, bruising, controlling. His voice in her ear telling her she was worthless. The smell of his cologne, the sound of her own begging. She couldn't breathe, couldn't move. Every muscle locked up as panic flooded her system. "Hey." The scarred man shook her slightly. "You listening?" She wasn't. She was drowning in memory, trapped in a body that wouldn't obey her commands to run or fight or scream. Then the front door of the restaurant burst open. Roberto's voice cut through the kitchen like a blade. "Let her go." And the three men turned. Roberto stood in the doorway with 4 of his own men behind him, all of them radiating lethal intent. His eyes found Haley, took in the hand gripping her arm, the terror on her face. His expression went absolutely murderous. "This is a misunderstanding," the scarred man said, releasing Haley and stepping back with hands raised. "We were just asking questions. In my restaurant. After hours. With your hands on her." Roberto's voice was deadly quiet. "That's not a misunderstanding. That's a declaration." One of the other men shifted nervously. "Paolo just wanted—" "I don't care what Paolo wanted." Roberto moved into the kitchen, his men spreading out behind him. The space suddenly felt too small, too charged. "You tell Paolo that if he ever sends anyone near her again, there won't be negotiation. There won't be discussion. There will be war." The scarred man's jaw tightened. "You'd risk everything over a woman? Try me and find out." The tension stretched like a wire about to snap. Haley could barely process what was happening, still locked in her freeze response, trembling against the prep table. Finally, the scarred man nodded once. "We're leaving." "No trouble. You're leaving and you're delivering my message. Word for word. Am I clear?" "Crystal." Roberto's men stepped aside, letting the 3 intruders walk out through the back door. The moment they were gone, Roberto crossed to Haley in 3 long strides. "Are you hurt?" His hands hovered near her shoulders, not touching, giving her space. "Did they hurt you?" Haley shook her head, but she couldn't speak. Her throat had closed up. The panic attack was building, pressure in her chest, vision narrowing. "Haley, look at me." Roberto's voice gentled. "You're safe. I'm right here." She tried to focus on his face, but everything was spinning. Her knees buckled. Roberto caught her, pulling her against his chest, one arm around her waist, the other cradling her head. "Get the car!" He snapped at one of his men. Then, softer, directly into her hair. "I've got you. You're okay. Just breathe." But she couldn't breathe. Her lungs wouldn't expand properly. She was hyperventilating, gasping, making horrible choking sounds against his shirt. Roberto lifted her into his arms and carried her through the restaurant to where his SUV was already pulling up outside. He climbed into the back seat with her, never letting go, positioning her across his lap. "Drive," he told Luca. The car pulled away from the curb. Haley buried her face in Roberto's neck, whole body shaking violently. She felt his hand stroking her back in slow, steady circles. "You're safe," he repeated like a mantra. "He can't touch you. Those men can't touch you. I won't let anyone hurt you ever again." Gradually, painfully slowly, her breathing evened out. The panic receded enough for rational thought to return. She became aware that she was clinging to Roberto like a lifeline, that his shirt was probably soaked with her tears, that she'd completely fallen apart in front of his men. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "Don't." His arms tightened around her. "Don't apologize for what they did to you. I froze. I should have run or screamed or something, but I just froze. That's what trauma does, Haley. It's not weakness. It's your body trying to protect you the only way it knows how." She pulled back enough to look at him. His jaw was still tight, with barely contained rage, but his eyes were gentle on her face. Who was Paolo? Someone who just made the biggest mistake of his life. He sent them because of me. Because you care about me. He sent them because he's testing boundaries, seeing how far he can push before I push back. Roberto's thumb brushed away tears from her cheek. But he chose the wrong person to use as a test. You're not a negotiating chip. You're not leverage. And anyone who treats you that way will learn exactly how far I'm willing to go. Haley rested her forehead against his shoulder, exhausted. "I don't want you starting a war because of me. Then Paolo shouldn't have touched you." The finality in his tone left no room for argument. They drove in silence for several minutes, before Haley realized they weren't heading to her apartment. "Where are we going?" "My place." "You're not staying alone tonight." She should have argued. Should have insisted she was fine. But the truth was, she didn't want to be alone. Didn't want to go back to her empty apartment and relive what just happened in the restaurant. So she just nodded and let Roberto take her somewhere safe. Because for better or worse, that's what he'd become to her. The place where fear couldn't follow. Roberto's penthouse occupied the entire top floor of the building. Haley's new apartment was 3 floors below. Smaller but still more luxurious than anywhere she'd ever lived. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the city, marble countertops in the kitchen, a bedroom larger than her entire previous apartment. "This is too much," she'd said when Roberto first showed her the space. "This is necessary," he'd replied. 24-hour security in the building, cameras on every floor, guards who know your face. Paolo won't try anything here. That had been 3 days ago. Now Haley stood in her new kitchen, unpacking the last box of belongings, when a knock sounded at her door. She checked the peephole and saw Roberto holding 2 grocery bags. She opened the door. "What's all this?" "Dinner. I'm teaching you to make proper Italian food." "I know how to cook. You know how to follow recipes?" "I'm teaching you to cook the way my grandmother did. No measurements, just feel." Over the next 2 hours, Roberto guided her through making fresh pasta from scratch. His hands covered hers, showing her how to knead the dough, when to add more flour, how to tell by texture when it was ready. He told stories about his grandmother, a tiny woman from Naples who ruled her kitchen like a general and made the best carbonara in New York. They ate at her small dining table, the pasta better than anything Haley had made before. Roberto opened wine and they talked until midnight, conversation flowing easily about everything and nothing. His associates who took themselves too seriously. Her brother's terrible taste in girlfriends based on old stories. The way the city looked different from this high up. "I like this," Haley said, gesturing between them. "Us. Like this." "Like what?" "Normal. No danger, no drama. Just 2 people eating pasta and talking." Roberto's expression grew serious. "It won't always be this calm. My world doesn't allow for much normal. I know, but maybe we can steal moments like this when it is." He reached across the table and took her hand. "I'd like that." The pattern continued over the following week. Roberto would appear at her door after his meetings, sometimes with ingredients, sometimes just wanting company. They cooked together, watched movies, fell asleep on her couch mid-conversation. The proximity of living in the same building made everything easier, more natural. One evening, they made osso buco, the apartment filling with the rich smell of braised veal and wine. They worked side by side, Roberto chopping vegetables while Haley stirred the pot, their movements synchronized like they'd been doing this for years. After dinner, they sat on her couch with the city glittering through the windows. Roberto had shed his suit jacket, sleeves rolled up, looking more relaxed than she'd ever seen him. "Thank you," Haley said quietly, "for everything. The apartment, the safety, the cooking lessons, all of it." Roberto turned to face her, his expression unreadable. "Haley, I need to tell you something." Her heart kicked. "Okay. These past few weeks being here with you, it's the most at peace I've felt in 5 years, maybe longer." He paused, choosing words carefully. "When I'm with you, I'm not the boss or Sophia's brother or the man everyone's afraid of. I'm just Roberto. I like just Roberto. I like who I am when I'm with you." He reached up, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. "But I need to know this is real. That you're not here because you feel obligated or because I helped you. You think I'm confusing gratitude with something else. Are you?" Haley took a breath. "Maybe at first I didn't know what I was feeling. Everything was tangled up with fear and relief and survival. But Roberto, I stopped confusing those things weeks ago. What are you feeling now?" She met his eyes directly. "Like I want you to kiss me and stop asking questions." Something in his expression cracked open. He leaned in slowly, giving her every chance to pull away. When his lips met hers, it was gentle at first, almost tentative. Then her hand came up to his jaw, and the kiss deepened, months of tension finally releasing. He pulled her closer, one hand sliding into her hair, the other at her waist. Years of loneliness seemed to pour out of both of them, desperate and hungry, and achingly real. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Roberto rested his forehead against hers. "Are you sure about this?" he asked. "I've never been more sure of anything." He kissed her again, slower this time, and stood, pulling her up with him. They moved to her bedroom, every touch deliberate and careful. Roberto checked in constantly, making sure she was okay, stopping whenever she tensed, never pushing. When she finally fell asleep in his arms hours later, Haley felt something she hadn't experienced in years, safe and wanted and whole. Morning light woke her. Roberto was already awake, watching her with an expression she couldn't quite name. "Hi," she said softly. "Hi yourself." He brushed his thumb across her cheek. "I should probably tell you that I have absolutely no idea what I'm doing here." "What do you mean?" "I don't do relationships, Haley. I don't let people close. But with you, I can't seem to stop myself." "Do you want to stop?" "No. That's what scares me." She kissed him, slow and sweet. "Then don't stop. Let's just see what happens." 2 weeks later, Haley was reviewing financial records for Roberto's various businesses when something caught her eye. Irregular transfers from one of his import companies, small amounts spread across multiple accounts. The pattern looked deliberately obscured, designed to avoid detection. She dug deeper, cross-referencing invoices and bank statements. The more she looked, the worse it got. Someone was skimming money systematically. Had been for at least 2 years. The total approached $300,000. Then she found something that made her blood run cold. Encrypted emails between someone in Roberto's organization and an unknown contact, discussing shipping routes, delivery schedules, security details, information that could get people killed. She traced the emails back to their source and felt her stomach drop. Michael Grant. For 7 years, he had been Roberto's personal accountant, the man who knew every shell company, every holding, every legitimate restaurant, and every carefully hidden front. The man Roberto trusted with the numbers he didn't let anyone else see. Haley printed everything and went straight to Roberto's penthouse. He answered the door in sweatpants and a t-shirt, clearly working from home. "Haley, what's wrong? We need to talk. Now." His expression shifted immediately to alert. He led her inside and closed the door. "What happened?" She spread the documents across his dining table. "Your accountant is stealing from you. $300,000 over 2 years, maybe more. But that's not the worst part." Roberto picked up one of the papers, scanning it quickly. His jaw tightened. "He's selling information to the Russians," Haley continued. "Transport routes, security details, Everything they'd need to hit your operations. I found emails going back 6 months. Roberto's knuckles went white, gripping the paper. Michael's been with me since I took over the organization. I trusted him completely. I'm sorry. I triple-checked everything. It's definitely him. Roberto pulled out his phone and made a call, speaking rapidly in Italian. When he hung up, his expression was carved from stone. He's being brought here now. I need you to go back to your apartment. Roberto, please, I don't want you here for this. She recognized that tone. Not a request. She gathered her documents and left, but her chest ached watching the betrayal settle over his features. An hour later, Roberto called her. Come back up. She found him pacing his living room, Michael Grant sitting in a chair with 2 of Roberto's men standing behind him. The accountant looked terrified, but defiant. Tell her what you told me, Roberto said, voice dangerously quiet. Michael's eyes darted to Haley. I have insurance. A complete dossier on every illegal thing Roberto's done for the past 10 years. Names, dates, locations, financial records, even things about Sophia. Roberto moved so fast Haley barely saw it. 1 second he was across the room, the next his hand was around Michael's throat, lifting him partially out of the chair. Don't say her name, Roberto growled. Boss, Luca warned from the doorway. Roberto released Michael with visible effort, stepping back. Where's the dossier? Safe location. If anything happens to me, if I don't check in every 72 hours, it goes automatically to the FBI, to the press, everywhere. Michael straightened his shirt. I want $2 million and safe passage out of the country. Then I disappear and the dossier stays buried. You think I'm going to pay you for betraying me? I think you don't have a choice. The room went silent. Haley watched Roberto struggle with rage and calculation, the impossible position Michael had put him in. Pay the traitor or risk losing everything he'd built. Get out of my sight, Roberto finally said. You have 48 hours to provide account numbers. After that, we negotiate terms. Michael left, escorted by the 2 guards. The moment the door closed, Roberto slammed his fist into the wall hard enough to crack the plaster. 7 years, he said, voice raw. 7 years I trusted him with everything. Haley approached carefully, taking his hand and examining the bloody knuckles. We'll figure this out. There's nothing to figure out. He has me backed into a corner. Either I pay him or I go to prison. There has to be another way. There isn't. He pulled his hand away, walking to the windows. This is my world, Haley. Betrayal and blood and impossible choices. This is what you're signing up for if you stay with me. She moved to stand beside him, taking his damaged hand again despite his resistance. Then I guess we start looking for that dossier. 6 months had passed since Roberto caught Haley falling in the club. She sat in her apartment 3 floors below his penthouse, reviewing financial records on her laptop when she noticed something unusual. Small discrepancies in one of Roberto's import companies. Nothing dramatic, just enough to make her pause and look closer. Over the next 3 days, she dug deeper. The pattern emerged slowly but unmistakably. Someone was moving money in careful increments, disguising the transfers as legitimate business expenses. Whoever was doing this knew the system intimately, understood exactly how much they could take without triggering automatic alerts. By the end of the week, Haley had traced nearly $300,000 in fraudulent transfers. But that wasn't what made her blood run cold. She found encrypted emails, conversations between someone in Roberto's organization and contacts she didn't recognize. The content was coded, but the implications were clear. Shipping routes, security schedules, names of people Roberto trusted. Someone was selling information that could get people killed. Haley cross-referenced the email metadata against access logs for Roberto's secure servers. It took hours of careful analysis, matching timestamps and IP addresses, but eventually the trail led to one name: Michael Grant, Roberto's accountant for 7 years. The man who handled his most sensitive financial operations, who had access to everything. Haley printed every piece of evidence and went upstairs to Roberto's penthouse. He answered the door wearing sweatpants and a white t-shirt, clearly working from home. His expression shifted the moment he saw her face. What happened? She walked past him and spread the documents across his dining table. Your accountant is stealing from you. $300,000 over the past 2 years. But that's not the worst part. Roberto picked up one of the printouts, scanning it quickly. His jaw tightened as he absorbed the information. "He's selling information," Haley continued, pointing to the highlighted emails. "To the Russians. Transport schedules, security details, financial records. Everything they'd need to hit your operations hard." Roberto's hands curled into fists, crushing the paper he was holding. "Michael has been with me since I took over. I trusted him with everything. I'm sorry, I checked it 3 times. It's definitely him." Roberto pulled out his phone and made a call, speaking in rapid Italian. When he hung up, his expression was carved from stone. "He's being brought here now. Go back to your apartment, Haley. Let me stay. You might need... Please." His eyes met hers. "I don't want you here for what comes next." She recognized that tone. Not anger at her, but protection. She gathered her documents and left, though her chest ached watching the betrayal settle over him like a physical weight. 40 minutes later, her phone rang. "Roberto, come back up," he said simply. Haley found Michael Grant sitting in a chair in Roberto's living room, 2 guards standing behind him. The accountant looked terrified, but there was something else in his expression. Defiance. Calculation. "Tell her," Roberto said, voice dangerously quiet. Michael's eyes darted to Haley, then back to Roberto. "I have insurance. A complete dossier documenting every illegal operation you've run for the past 10 years. Names, dates, financial records, witness statements. Everything." He swallowed. "Including information about Sophia." Roberto moved so fast Haley barely tracked it. His hand wrapped around Michael's throat, lifting him partially out of the chair. "Don't you dare say her name." "Boss," Luca warned from the doorway. Roberto released Michael with visible effort, stepping back. His chest heaved with barely controlled rage. Michael straightened his shirt with shaking hands. "If anything happens to me, if I don't check in every 72 hours, the dossier goes automatically to the FBI, to journalists, everywhere. Your empire collapses, and you go to prison for life." "Where is it?" Roberto's voice was deadly calm now. "Safe location. Multiple backups. You'll never find them all." Michael's confidence was returning. "I want $2 million in safe passage out of the country. Then the dossier stays buried and I disappear." The room went silent. Haley watched Roberto struggle with the impossible position Michael had created. Pay the traitor or risk losing everything? "Get out of my sight," Roberto finally said. "You have 48 hours to provide account details for the transfer." After Michael left with the guards, Roberto walked to the windows and slammed his fist into the wall hard enough to crack the plaster. Blood appeared on his knuckles. 7 years, he said, voice raw. I trusted him with my life. Haley approached carefully, taking his damaged hand and examining it. "We'll figure this out." "There's nothing to figure out. He has me trapped. Either I pay him, or everything I've built gets destroyed. There has to be another way." "There isn't." He pulled away from her, pacing. "This is my world, Haley. Betrayal and impossible choices. This is what staying with me means." She let him pace for a moment, thinking. Then she said quietly, "What if we could find the dossier? He said there are multiple backups. We'd never get them all." "Maybe, but I might be able to find where he's storing them." She pulled out her phone, opening the files she'd been studying. Every time he sent those encrypted emails, he logged in from the same location outside the city, Atlantic City, always the same IP block. Roberto stopped pacing. "You think that's where he keeps the files?" "I think he's using someone there. Someone who doesn't know what they're really storing for him. Look at his spending." She pulled up bank records. Regular wire transfers to a woman named Laura Wells, casino dealer. No criminal record. No connection to you. I'd bet anything she has those files in her apartment without knowing what they are. Roberto studied the information, his tactical mind clearly working. If you're right, if we can recover those files before he checks in again, he loses all his leverage. Exactly. You wouldn't have to pay him anything. He looked at her for a long moment. You're getting frighteningly good at thinking like someone in my world. I'm getting good at understanding how to protect what matters to me. That night, Roberto assembled a small team. Luca, a tech specialist named Ryan, and 2 others Haley didn't know well. They would drive to Atlantic City, locate Laura Wells, and recover the dossier. "I'm going with you," Haley said. "Absolutely not. Roberto, this could be a trap. Michael could have people waiting. I'm not putting you in that situation. Then what do you want me to do? Sit here and worry?" He pulled her close, pressing his forehead to hers. "Yes. Stay here where you're safe. Monitor the situation remotely with the tech team. If something goes wrong, you'll know immediately." She hated it, but she understood. Be careful. Always am. 3 hours later, Haley sat in Roberto's office with 2 of his tech people, watching multiple screens showing GPS tracking, audio feeds, and network access. Roberto's team had reached Atlantic City and located Laura Wells's apartment building. "Audio check." Luca's voice came through the speakers. "Clear," one of the tech guys responded. "We're monitoring everything." Haley listened as Roberto knocked on Laura's door. A woman's voice answered, cautious. Roberto spoke smoothly, introducing himself as someone who needed to discuss Michael Grant. After some convincing, Laura let them inside. "I'm accessing her network now." Ryan's voice came through. "Found her laptop." "Haley, you should be seeing it on screen 3. Haley moved to the indicated monitor. A device labeled Laura Laptop appeared. She took control remotely, navigating through the file system. Most of it was normal. Photos, work documents, streaming services. Then she found it. A hidden folder deep in the directory structure, protected by encryption. "Got something," Haley said into the microphone. "Encrypted folder that doesn't match her normal usage patterns." "Can you open it?" Roberto's voice asked. "Working on it." The encryption was strong, but not impossible. Haley ran decryption protocols while listening to Roberto gently questioning Laura in the background. The woman sounded confused and scared, insisting Michael had just asked her to keep some work files safe, that she'd never looked inside. The encryption cracked. Haley's breath caught as the folder contents appeared. Dozens of files. Financial ledgers, organizational charts, photographs, scanned documents, and one file that made her hands shake. Sophia investigation notes. "It's real," Haley said quietly. "The dossier, all of it. I'm looking at everything right now." Silence on the other end. Then Roberto's voice, carefully controlled. "Copy everything to our secure server, then destroy the originals completely." Haley initiated the transfer, watching the progress bar crawl across the screen. The files were large, detailed, damning. Everything Michael had threatened existed exactly as he'd claimed. "How long?" Roberto asked. 2 minutes, maybe less. Laura's voice came through, shaky. "Am I in trouble? Michael said this was just insurance for his job. I didn't know it was anything illegal." "You're not in trouble," Roberto said, his tone gentler than Haley expected. "But you need to forget this folder existed. If Michael contacts you, tell him your laptop crashed, and you had to get everything wiped. Luca will give you money for a tech repair shop and help you with the story." The transfer completed. Haley executed the destruction protocol, overwriting the original files multiple times with random data until they were completely unrecoverable. "Done," she said. "He has nothing now. We have everything." She heard Roberto exhale slowly, a sound of profound relief mixed with rage. The team left Laura's apartment with instructions and enough money to make sure she cooperated. When Roberto returned to the city hours later, he came straight to Haley's apartment. She opened the door, and he pulled her into his arms immediately, holding her so tightly she could barely breathe. "It's over," he said into her hair. "We have the only copies now. He can't touch us. What happens to Michael?" Roberto pulled back to look at her. "He thinks he still has leverage. Tomorrow morning he'll demand his money, and I'll show him exactly what we found in Atlantic City. Then he'll understand how badly he miscalculated. And then he disappears. Not dead," he added, seeing her expression, "but he'll lose everything. His money, his reputation, his connections. He'll spend the rest of his life looking over his shoulder." The next day, Michael arrived at Roberto's penthouse expecting to finalize his payment. Instead, he found Roberto sitting calmly at his dining table with Luca standing nearby. Do you have my account information? Michael asked, trying to sound confident. Roberto slid a folder across the table. I have something better. Open it. Michael opened the folder. His face went white as he saw printouts of his own dossier, every page stamped with timestamps showing when they'd been copied from Laura Wells's laptop. How did you... You underestimated the woman who found your theft in the first place, Roberto said quietly. She's better at patterns than you ever were at hiding them. Michael's hand shook. I have other copies. Other backups you didn't find. No, you don't. We traced every login, every upload, every access point you used for the past 2 years. The only copies that existed were in Atlantic City with a woman who thought she was helping her boyfriend with work files. Roberto leaned forward. You have nothing now, Michael. No leverage, no protection, no future. You can't just... I can. And I am. Roberto stood. You're going to return every dollar you stole. You're going to sign documents transferring any remaining assets to accounts I specify. And then you're going to leave this city and never return. If you do, if you even think about causing problems, I'll make sure what's left of your life becomes very unpleasant. Michael looked between Roberto and Luca, clearly realizing he had no options left. And if I refuse, then we have a very different conversation. One that doesn't end with you walking out of here. 2 weeks later, life settled into something approaching normal. Derek's trial had wrapped with a guilty verdict and a long prison sentence. Without the videos and without his network intact, his name turned into a headline and then a warning, not a threat hanging over Haley's head anymore. The Russians, having lost their source and been quietly reminded how thin their margin for error really was, pulled back. Michael Grant, relocated under conditions that left him with no access to Roberto's systems and no offshore kingdom to hide in, treated the loss of his secret empire like a permanent scar and a reason to be painfully cooperative. A week after the verdict, Haley stood on the corner across from a crowded coffee shop near Columbia University, fingers twisting the strap of her bag as students streamed past her. For the first time in months, she wasn't watching for Derek's shadow in every dark doorway. She was watching for one familiar face. Haley? She turned, and there he was. Ryan, thinner than she remembered and with deeper shadows under his eyes, but very much alive. For a second, neither of them moved. Then he dropped his backpack and hauled her into a desperate, bone-crushing hug. You were dead, he choked against her shoulder. I thought... You just disappeared. I thought I'm okay, she said, even though they both knew that wasn't entirely true. It's over. Derek's in prison. He can't hurt us anymore, and I am so sorry I couldn't tell you sooner. They sat inside by the window, while she told him as much of the truth as she could. The blackmail, the escape, Roberto, the safe house, the videos destroyed. Ryan listened with his hands wrapped around his coffee cup like it was the only solid thing in the room. So when I was helping Luca in Atlantic City, he said slowly, I was helping you too. You were saving me, she answered. Again. He huffed out a wet laugh. You really know how to pick dramatic life choices, sis. By the time they left, they had a plan. Regular calls, visits when it was safe, tuition and rent no longer a constant emergency. Roberto had already quietly taken care of the overdue bills and the scholarship committee's questions. All Ryan had to do was keep doing the one thing he'd always done, survive long enough to build something better. Haley and Roberto fell into comfortable rhythms. Mornings reviewing business operations together, evenings cooking in one of their kitchens, nights tangled together in sheets that smelled like home. One Sunday morning, Roberto drove them to the cemetery where Sophia was buried. Haley had been there before, but this time felt different, more permanent. She carried sunflowers, Sophia's favorite. They stood in front of the simple headstone together. Haley knelt and arranged the flowers carefully while Roberto stood with his hands in his pockets watching. Hi, Sophia, Haley said softly. I brought your brother. He's doing better lately. Less angry, more at peace. I like to think you'd approve. Roberto crouched beside her. I told her about you, he said quietly. About how you saved me from my own worst instincts. About how you make me want to be better than I am. Haley took his hand, threading their fingers together. They stayed like that for several minutes, the morning sun warming their backs. "Thank you for bringing me," Haley said as they walked back to the car. "Thank you for coming, for being someone I can bring here." That evening, back at Roberto's penthouse, he called Haley into his office. He stood by the safe, the large one built into the wall that held his most important documents. "I want to show you something," he said, opening it. Inside were stacks of papers, ledgers, and several small boxes. Roberto pulled out a brass key on a simple chain. "This opens this safe," he explained. "It also opens 2 others in secure locations. Everything I own of real value is accessible with this key." Haley's breath caught. "Why are you showing me this?" "Because I'm giving it to you." He placed the key in her palm, closing her fingers around it. "I updated my will last week. If anything happens to me, you inherit the legitimate businesses in this apartment. Luca gets controlling interest in the other operations. My mother is provided for. But you get the key to everything else. Roberto, I can't—" "You can, and you will." He cupped her face gently. "This isn't about money or property. It's about trust. You're the only person I trust completely with my future, with everything I've built, and everything I hope to build." Tears burned in her eyes. "You're giving me your whole life. I'm sharing it with you. There's a difference." She threw her arms around his neck, the key pressed between them. "I love you. I should have said it before now, but I love you." He pulled back just enough to look at her, his dark eyes intense. "I love you too. From the moment I caught you falling, I think some part of me knew you were going to change everything." They stood there in the quiet of his office, holding each other while the city glittered beyond the windows. The danger hadn't disappeared. Men like Paolo still existed in the shadows. Threats would always emerge in Roberto's world, but they'd face them together now. 2 people who'd found each other in the wreckage of their worst moments and built something worth protecting. Later that night, Haley stood on Roberto's balcony, the key hanging around her neck on its chain. Roberto joined her, wrapping his arms around her waist from behind. "Do you ever regret it?" she asked. "Saving me that night? Never. Best decision I ever made, even with all the complications, especially because of them. They proved we could survive anything together." He kissed her temple. "You walked into my life broken and afraid. You're leaving that version of yourself behind every single day. That's not weakness. That's the strongest thing I've ever witnessed." Haley turned in his arms, looking up at him. The man who'd caught her when she fell, who'd destroyed her demons, who'd given her not just safety, but a future worth living. "Then let's keep walking," she said. "Together. Wherever it leads." He kissed her, deep and certain, a promise sealed in the space between heartbeats. And in the city below, life moved forward, chaotic and dangerous, and beautiful. But up here, 6 months after a maid fainted in front of a Mafia boss, 2 people stood together and chose each other over and over again.